In the cold marble lobby of Zenith Tower, tension already hung thick enough to choke on, even before any sirens began flashing. A multimillionaire CEO stood with hands raised, facing an officer who had already unclipped his handcuffs. Racism, unchecked power, and a catastrophic misjudgment were about to collide with devastating force. Rain lashed heavily against the floor-to-ceiling glass of the downtown Chicago skyscraper. Late at night, the city had finally surrendered to silence. Inside the sprawling, impeccably lit lobby of brushed steel and imported Italian marble, the atmosphere felt sterile and unwelcoming. Leland Rhodes simply wanted to retrieve a folder and go home. As the sole founder and chief executive of Rhodes Horizon, one of the Midwest's most successful venture capital firms, he had just arrived after a grueling long-haul flight from Tokyo, where he had spent the week negotiating a complex tech acquisition. Exhaustion pulled at his eyes and a dull ache settled in his lower back. Wanting nothing more than a hot shower and his own bed, he had stopped by the office to collect the hard copy contracts locked in his private safe before an important morning meeting. Because it was the middle of the night, he had skipped his usual tailored suits and wore instead a faded gray university hoodie, worn dark jeans, and comfortable sneakers. His carry-on bag was slung over one shoulder. To anyone passing on the street, he might have looked like a tired graduate student or night shift courier. To the building's overnight security detail, he apparently looked like a threat. Leland walked past the empty main reception desk, his sneakers squeaking faintly on the polished floor. He headed straight for the secluded alcove housing the executive elevators, the ones requiring a high-level biometric keycard simply to summon the car. He had just unzipped his duffel to reach for his wallet when a sharp, authoritative voice echoed through the cavernous space. "Hey you, step away from the glass." Leland paused, hand still inside the bag, and turned slowly. A uniformed police officer strode purposefully across the lobby floor, hand resting aggressively on his utility belt near his radio. His posture was rigid, chest puffed out in a classic display of aggressive authority. "I said step away from the elevator," the officer snapped, closing the distance. His name tag read G. Vance. Officer Garrett Vance was working in an off-duty security detail for the building, a common arrangement for city officers seeking extra pay. He was a stocky man, with a tight buzz cut and a perpetual scowl that suggested he viewed the world as a series of potential violations. Leland pulled his hand out slowly, holding his leather wallet. He kept his movements deliberately visible. "Good evening, officer," he said in his calm, resonant baritone that usually commanded boardrooms without ever needing to rise. "I'm just heading up to my office to grab some files. I'll be out of your way shortly." Officer Vance stopped a few feet away, eyes raking over the casual attire and lingering with obvious disdain on the faded hoodie. His lips curled into a skeptical sneer. "Your office? Right. Look, buddy, I don't know how you slipped past the exterior doors, but the loading dock is closed and deliveries don't come through the front at this hour." "I'm not a delivery driver," Leland replied, maintaining his polite tone. He knew exactly what was happening. He had lived long enough as a black man in America to recognize the sudden, sharp shift in the air, the instantaneous presumption of guilt. "I work here. I'm going up to the top floor." Vance let out a harsh, disbelieving laugh. "The top floor? You've got to be kidding. That's the penthouse suite, Rhodes Horizon. That whole floor belongs to the investment firm." "I am well aware of who occupies the floor," Leland said quietly. He opened his wallet and produced his black tier keycard, holding it up. "If you'll just let me scan this, I'll be on my way." Vance's hand shot out and snatched the keycard from Leland's fingers with unnecessary force. The officer examined the sleek, unmarked black card, his frown deepening. "Where did you get this?" "This is an executive master pass. I received it from building administration when I leased the floor," Leland explained, his patience beginning to fray, though his face remained a mask of stoic composure. "Cut the crap," Vance growled, voice dropping to a menacing register. He unclipped his radio. "You expect me to believe a guy dressed like that belongs in a multi-million-dollar executive suite? You either stole this card or found it dropped on the street. Now I need your government ID right now. And keep your hands where I can see them." Leland sighed, a slow, weary sound. He reached into his wallet again and handed over his Illinois driver's license. Vance snatched it, shining his heavy tactical flashlight directly onto the plastic before deliberately flashing the blinding beam straight into Leland's eyes. Leland did not flinch. He simply stared back through the harsh light. "Leland Rhodes," Vance read aloud, mispronouncing the name slightly. He checked the address, an estate in an affluent suburb. Vance snorted. "Yeah, okay. A fake ID to go with a stolen keycard. You guys are getting bold. Officer Vance, Leland said, voice dropping to the cold absolute authority he reserved for hostile negotiations. That is my real ID. That is my real address. And this is my building. Now you can either call the building manager and ask her to verify who I am, or you can return my property and step aside. Vance's face flushed a deep, angry red. He hated being spoken to with authority, especially by someone he had already categorized as a criminal. His other hand drifted instinctively toward his handcuffs. You don't give me orders, boy. You're trespassing in a restricted commercial property in possession of stolen security credentials and presenting forged identification. Turn around and put your hands flat against the marble wall. Now. The lobby fell silent except for the faint, rhythmic drumming of rain against the exterior glass. Leland did not move. He stood his ground, eyes locked on the officer. He had dealt with aggressive, small-minded men before, but usually across a mahogany table with millions at stake. The stakes here felt visceral and dangerously unpredictable. I am not turning around, and I am not putting my hands on the wall, Leland stated evenly. If you lay a hand on me, Officer Vance, I promise you the ensuing legal and financial consequences will fundamentally alter the trajectory of your life. It was a bold statement delivered with icy calm that momentarily threw the officer off balance. Vance hesitated, hand hovering over his cuffs. Suspects usually yelled, ran, or complied out of fear. They rarely stood perfectly still and threatened litigation with perfect diction. But ego quickly overtook caution. He took a step forward, invading Leland's personal space until his chest almost bumped the CEO's shoulder. Are you resisting arrest? Vance demanded, voice thick with anticipation, almost hoping for a physical altercation to justify his next move. Leland took a slow, deep breath. He realized that if he pushed back physically or raised his voice, Vance would use it as an excuse to escalate to violence. He needed to dismantle this man's power trip completely and undeniably. No, he said smoothly. I am not resisting. In fact, I want to cooperate fully with your investigation into this alleged break-in. Vance blinked, caught off guard by the sudden shift. Excuse me? You think I stole this key card to break into the Rhodes Horizon offices? Leland continued, tone dangerously polite. If it's stolen, the card's internal security chip will have been flagged by the system, and it won't call the elevator. Even if it does call the elevator, it won't bypass the secondary biometric scanner at the penthouse doors. Why don't we test your theory? Take me up. Escort me yourself. If the card doesn't work, or the doors don't open, you can arrest me right there in the elevator. Vance narrowed his eyes, mind working through the proposal. He looked at the executive elevator bank, then back at Leland. A cruel, triumphant smile twisted his lips. He thought Leland was bluffing, trying to buy time or hoping the system was glitchy enough to let him escape. You want to play games? He sneered, tossing the black keycard back so it hit Leland's chest and clattered to the floor. Pick it up. Go ahead. Swipe it. But I'm warning you, the second that alarm trips, you're going face down on the floor, and I won't be gentle. Leland calmly bent down, retrieved his keycard, and turned to the sleek black panel beside the elevator doors. He tapped the card against the glass reader. A soft chime echoed through the alcove. The LED strip surrounding the elevator frame shifted from solid red to luminous blue. The brushed steel doors slid silently open, revealing a luxurious wood-paneled interior. Vance's expression faltered for a fraction of a second, but he quickly recovered. Lucky break. Found a card they haven't deactivated yet. Get in. Leland stepped into the elevator and moved to the back corner. Vance followed closely, keeping his hand near his belt, eyes darting around the confined space. Once the doors closed, Leland reached out and pressed his thumb against the glowing biometric pad beneath the floor buttons. The scanner flashed green, and the elevator began its swift, silent ascent. The tension inside the car felt suffocating. Vance stood awkwardly, trying to maintain his intimidating posture, but the sheer opulence of the private elevator seemed to dwarf him. He stared at the digital floor indicator as the numbers climbed rapidly. You know, you people always think you're smarter than you are. Vance broke the silence, voice echoing slightly. You think you can fast talk your way into a high-end suite, grab some laptops or petty cash, and walk out. I've been working the downtown beat long enough to know a scam when I see one. Leland didn't look at him. He kept his eyes fixed on the doors. Is that right? You people don't try to twist my words into some race thing, Vance scoffed defensively. I mean criminals, con artists. We'll see who the con artist is in a moment, Leland replied softly. The doors opened to the breathtaking penthouse. The Rhodes Horizon reception area was a vast open space bathed in warm ambient lighting. floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning panoramic view of the Chicago skyline, rain streaking across the glass and distorting the city lights into a watercolor. Directly opposite the elevators, mounted on a massive slab of imported black marble, the words "Roads Horizon" gleamed in brushed silver. Vance stepped out first, flashlight drawn again, sweeping the empty, immaculate space. He looked for shattered glass or overturned desks, any sign of forced entry. Everything was perfect. "All right," he barked, turning back to Leland, who was casually stepping out of the elevator. "Game's over. Hands on your head." Before Leland could respond, a side door down the main hallway swung open. A man walked out, rubbing his eyes and carrying a stack of thick legal binders. It was Dominic Hale, the firm's chief legal counsel and one of Leland's oldest friends. Dominic was tall and sharply dressed, currently looking disheveled from pulling an all-nighter finalizing important merger documents. He froze, staring at the bizarre scene, his CEO in a faded hoodie being held at flashlight point by an aggressive, red-faced cop. "Leland," Dominic said, voice thick with absolute bewilderment. "What the hell is going on here?" Vance whipped around, shining his flashlight at Dominic. "Stay right there. Who are you? Are you with him?" Dominic squinted against the glare, shot quickly morphing into furious indignation. He dropped the binders onto a nearby glass table with a loud thud. "Get that damn light out of my face, officer. I am Dominic Hale, chief legal counsel for this firm, and you are currently pointing a weapon at the owner of this company." Vance froze. The flashlight beam trembled slightly in his grip. He looked from Dominic's tailored suit to Leland's faded hoodie, the gears in his mind grinding to a violent, catastrophic halt. "Owner?" he managed to croak, the word tasting like ash. Leland stepped fully into the light of the reception area, posture straightening, presence suddenly filling the massive room. The tired graduate student vanished, replaced entirely by the formidable titan of industry. "Yes, Officer Vance," he said, voice echoing like a gavel striking wood. "Welcome to my office." Silence descended upon the penthouse floor, heavier and far colder than the storm raging outside the panoramic windows. The flashlight in Garrett Vance's hand suddenly seemed to weigh 100 pounds. Its beam dipped, hitting the polished hardwood and reflecting a fractured, shaky circle of light. Color drained entirely from his face, leaving behind a sickly pale hue that clashed with the aggressive red flush from moments before. He looked from Dominic Hale, standing rigidly by the legal binders, back to Leland Rhodes. The faded gray hoodie no longer looked like the uniform of a street-level trespasser. Framed by the staggering wealth of the penthouse suite, it now projected the untouchable, effortless confidence of a man who owned the building. "I was just following standard security protocols," Vance stammered, the menacing gravel in his voice evaporating into a thin, defensive squeak. He instinctively took a half step backward, finally unclipping his hand from his utility belt. He was uncooperative. He refused to explain his presence downstairs. Dominic let out a sharp, humorless laugh that echoed off the imported marble walls. He adjusted his glasses, exhaustion entirely replaced by a predatory legal focus. "Uncooperative? Officer, I have known Leland for many years. He is physically incapable of raising his voice unless he is closing a merger. Do not stand in our headquarters and lie to my face. What is your badge number?" "Now hold on a minute, sir." Vance tried to recover a shred of shattered authority, puffing his chest out marginally. "It's late. Your CEO comes walking in off the street, looking like that. No suit, carrying a duffel bag. You can't blame a guy for doing his job." "Your job," Leland interjected, voice slicing through the room with glacial precision, "is to secure the premises, not to racially profile the tenants, confiscate private property without cause, and threaten physical violence." "You did not ask for clarification, Officer Vance. You demanded my identification, called it a forgery, claimed my biometric key card was stolen, and threatened to throw me face down on the lobby floor." Vance swallowed hard, Adam's apple bobbing nervously. "I didn't mean it like that. I was establishing command presence. It's police training. It wasn't about race." "It is always about command presence until you realize you're commanding the wrong person," Leland replied evenly. He walked past Vance, completely ignoring the officer's proximity, and moved toward the sprawling mahogany reception desk. He tapped a sleek touchscreen panel embedded in the wood. The massive floor-to-ceiling glass wall behind the desk instantly transitioned from opaque to transparent, revealing a vast, dimly lit boardroom. "Dominic," Leland said, not looking back, "call Victoria Lang. Wake her up. Tell her to get down here immediately. Then call the central precinct. Ask for the watch commander. Inform them that an off-duty officer working a private security detail is currently detaining the owner of Rhodes Horizon under threat of arrest. I'm not detaining you, Vance blurted out, panic finally breaking through his stubborn ego. Look, Mr. Rhodes, there's been a misunderstanding, a huge misunderstanding. I apologize. Let's just chalk this up to a late-night security mix-up, all right? I'll head back down to the lobby. You guys do your work. Stop right there, Dominic barked, stepping into Vance's path. The lawyer was an inch taller than the cop and right now radiated absolute fury. You are not leaving this floor. You initiated an unlawful detainment downstairs and you escalated it by forcing my client into a confined elevator under duress. If you step into that elevator, I will personally ensure you are charged with kidnapping and false imprisonment by sunrise. Kidnapping? Are you out of your mind? Vance scoffed, though his eyes darted nervously toward the exit. He agreed to come up here. I offered to prove my identity because you threatened to assault me if I didn't, Leland corrected him quietly, leaning against the reception desk. There is a distinct legal difference, officer, one I am sure the Internal Affairs Bureau will be fascinated to explore. Vance glared at them, breathing heavily, realizing he was entirely trapped. You have no proof of what happened downstairs. It's your word against mine. My body camera is charging in the security office. I was off duty. A tiny, almost imperceptible smile touched the corners of Leland's mouth. Not a smile of joy, but the cold satisfaction of a trap snapping shut. You assume, he said, tapping the touchscreen once more, that because I am dressed casually, I am careless. Zenith Tower is a Class A commercial property, but Rhodes Horizon handles highly classified intellectual property and sovereign wealth funds. We don't rely on the building's lobby cameras alone. A massive flat screen on the waiting area wall suddenly flickered to life, displaying a grid of high-definition camera feeds. Leland tapped a button and the screen maximized the feed, showing the exact alcove of the executive elevators downstairs. The footage was pristine, high resolution, and most importantly, carried a small pulsing audio waveform at the bottom. Microphones? Vance whispered, face draining of whatever color had managed to return. Military-grade directional audio, Dominic confirmed, crossing his arms. Legally installed, explicitly detailed in the building's lease agreement, and currently storing every word you said to Mr. Rhodes on an encrypted off-site server. We have your threats, your slurs, and your unprovoked aggression in flawless high definition. Vance stared at the screen, watching his own aggressive posture and hearing his own voice echo through the penthouse speakers. The reality of his situation crashed down upon him. He hadn't just insulted a rich man, he had handed a flawless, undeniable civil rights lawsuit to a powerful CEO who had his own legal department. Later, the atmosphere in the penthouse boardroom felt suffocatingly tense. The storm outside continued to batter the glass, but inside a different kind of tempest was reaching its climax. Captain Silas Reed, a veteran of the Chicago Police Department with silver hair and a deeply lined face, sat at the head of the massive mahogany table. Beside him sat Victoria Lang, the general manager of Zenith Tower, who had arrived wearing a hastily thrown-on coat over her pajamas and looked utterly horrified. Officer Vance stood rigidly at attention near the doorway, stripped of his usual swagger and looking like a scolded child. Leland sat opposite the captain, a steaming cup of black coffee in his hands. Dominic Hale stood firmly behind Leland's chair, holding a tablet that had just finished playing the lobby security footage for the third time. The silence that followed the end of the video was deafening. Captain Reed rubbed his temples and let out a long, exhausted sigh. He looked at Vance, eyes filled with a mixture of disgust and deep disappointment. Vance, he started, voice a low, dangerous rumble. You have been on my roster for several years. We have had multiple seminars and briefings on de-escalation, bias training, and community relations. And yet I am sitting here watching you treat a prominent citizen like a vagrant because he happened to be wearing a sweatshirt. Captain, he was lurking by the private elevators late at night, Vance pleaded, though his voice lacked conviction. I asked for his ID and he handed me a license for an estate in an affluent suburb. It didn't add up. It didn't add up to you? Victoria Lang interrupted, voice shaking with anger. Mr. Rhodes pays millions annually to lease this space. He is the anchor tenant of my building. You were hired to protect this property, not to terrorize the people who own it. Zenith Tower is terminating our off-duty contract with you, effective immediately. You are permanently banned from these premises. Vance flinched as if physically struck. Losing the contract meant losing thousands in easy overtime. That's just the beginning, Garrett, Captain Reed said grimly. He stood, towering over the disgraced officer. Hand over your badge and your service weapon right now. Vance's eyes widened in sheer panic. Captain, please, I'll apologize. I'll take a suspension. Don't strip my badge. You escalated a nonviolent encounter based entirely on your own prejudice, threatened physical assault without provocation, and unlawfully detained a civilian, Reed listed with mechanical coldness. You are stripped of police powers, pending a full internal affairs investigation, gun and badge. Now. With trembling hands, Vance unclipped his heavy leather belt, placed his firearm on the boardroom table, and unpinned his silver star beside it. The metallic clink echoed loudly in the quiet room. Wait in my cruiser downstairs, Reed ordered. Do not speak to anyone. Do not touch your phone. Vance looked at Leland one last time. There was no apology in his eyes. Only the bitter, resentful glare of a man blaming the world for his own catastrophic mistakes. Without another word, he turned and walked out, the heavy glass doors swinging shut behind him. Captain Reed turned back to Leland, posture softening slightly. Mr. Rhodes, on behalf of the department, I am profoundly sorry. This is not the standard we uphold. If you choose to pursue formal civil charges, you will face no friction from my precinct. We will provide any documentation your legal team requires. Thank you, Captain, Leland said softly, placing his coffee cup down. Dominic will be in touch with the city's legal department. We will be pursuing this to the full extent of the law, not for a payout, but to ensure that man never wears a badge in this city again. Reed nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of the promise. I don't blame you, sir. Have as good a night as possible, considering. The captain gathered Vance's weapon and badge, escorting a visibly shaken Victoria Lang out of the suite. When the doors finally closed, leaving just Leland and Dominic alone in the sprawling office, the silence returned, thick and exhausting. Dominic placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. Are you all right, Leland? Leland looked down at his faded gray hoodie, tracing the worn fabric near the pocket. He had built an empire from nothing. He commanded boardrooms, moved markets, and employed thousands. Yet in the eyes of a man with a badge and a bias, all of his achievements, his wealth, and his character had been entirely invisible, eclipsed by the color of his skin and the casual clothes on his back. I'm fine, Dominic, Leland whispered, though his jaw remained tightly clenched. I just came here to get my files. He stood up and walked past the breathtaking view of the Chicago skyline, heading toward the private safe in his inner office. The storm outside was finally beginning to break, but Leland knew all too well that some storms, the quiet, insidious ones built on prejudice and assumptions, never truly passed. They simply waited in the lobby. This story of power, prejudice, and instant accountability likely kept you on the edge of your seat. Real power doesn't need to shout, and true character is revealed when the masks fall away. If you love this dramatic turn and want more intense, real-life inspired stories of justice being served, give it a like right now. Don't forget to share this with your friends and subscribe to the channel so you never miss our next upload.